Very early this morning, President Trump announced major U.S. military action against Iran. We are joined in this action by Israel. The name of the American mission is Operation Epic Fury. The name of the Israeli mission is Operation Roaring Lion. It is expected, well, at least by President Trump, that these actions will take at least several days. Of course, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, so we will see how this all plays out. I just want to go through a few quick things. I've written a lot in the attached Substack. I'm going to make this video kind of brief, but maybe not very brief. So, one thing to note that I thought was very interesting in President Trump's announcement this morning, which is in this Substack post, and you should watch it, Israel is never mentioned. That's very interesting. It doesn't mean he is downplaying the importance of Israel in this operation. It means that he wants, and Israel wants, this attack, this conflict to be framed as the US versus Iran, as the civilized world versus Iran, and not as Israel versus its enemies. Having it as the US versus Iran allows more other nations to at least consider some kind of support or at least less opposition than they otherwise might. There's some debate, as you normally get in these situations, about whether Congress needs to have a role here, whether Congress needs to authorize this kind of mission. So I want to say two things about that. First, it's a legitimate question, and the answer is unclear to me, but the answer may well be yes. The answer is also irrelevant. If you launch a Tomahawk missile at a target and that missile was not properly authorized by Congress, does that mean that the missile will not destroy its target? I don't think so. So we can save this congressional debate. Again, it's not an irrelevant question, but at the moment it is. Now, this Iranian regime has had blood on its hands since its founding, right? So we had the Iranian hostage crisis, and that was dealt with. But just a few years after that, in 1983, the Iranians, through their proxies, destroyed the U.S. Marine Corps barracks and some other buildings in Beirut, Lebanon, and killed hundreds of Americans. This was one of their first acts as taking over and running, Iran and having these proxies. This is essentially an early version of Hezbollah. And Iran killed many Americans in the Iraq war, and they kill Americans and Westerners and Jews wherever and whenever they can, and wherever and whenever they think they can get away with it. You know the chants that you see on television in the streets of Tehran: death to Israel, death to America. By the way, these are crowds of the most hardcore regime supporters or people who are paid to be there. This is not the way most of the Iranian population feels. They actually tend to be fairly young, fairly well educated, and fairly pro Western. Don't forget, Iranians are not Arabs. They are Persians. They are very proud of that. And their view of the world is quite different than the view of the world that you see in most Arab countries. In any case, Iran has the potential to be an excellent ally to the United States. But in the meantime, this is a regime that has more American blood on its hands than any other existing regime in the world. And I understand that this is a high risk and potentially high reward operation by President Trump. This is something America should have done a long time ago, frankly. Again, it's high risk, and the American people going into this do not support it. And in a sense, that makes me appreciate what President Trump is doing even more, right? The American people will follow if the actions are successful, which is not necessarily a great commentary about the American people, but it is what it is. We saw the same thing with Venezuela, where the American people were against military action to begin with, although I don't think they had a very strong or intense opinion because they hadn't thought about it very much. But the idea of U.S. military action against Iran has been something that's been on our minds for many years. It should have been on our minds a long time ago. Unfortunately, we had the disastrous JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that was brought to us by the idiots in the Obama administration, and which wisely Donald Trump threw out as soon as he could. But in any case, Iran has much American blood on its hands, and they need to be dealt with. I saw a post on X, formerly Twitter, by Michael McFaul, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, and he said that while he wants regime change in Iran and while he wants a democracy in Iran, he does not support military action against Iran without United Nations Security Council support. Now, don't forget, the Security Council includes both Russia and China, both of which trade weapons and oil with Iran. They have massive financial interrelationships, and they all wish the worst for the United States. And these countries, Russia and China, have vetoes on the Security Council. So there is zero possibility of UN Security Council approval for military action against Iran, probably zero possibility of support for that, even if Iran dropped a bomb on the United States first. So when Mike McFaul and people like him say they wouldn't support this without the approval of the UN Security Council, what they're saying is they will never support it. You know what? Screw them. Now, this is also bringing out a lot of anti-Semitism on social media, which has been coming out of the woodwork for quite some time now, with terrible people on the right like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, people who I wish were never heard from again, and people on the left like Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks on MSNBC. I don't know if his show is still on MSNBC or not, but a perfect example of rabid anti-Semitism on the left. So if you have the misfortune or the poor judgment to spend a lot of time on Twitter, you will see an immense amount of anti-Semitism coming out in the aftermath of the announcement of these strikes. You will also see some people, and this is also a form of anti-Semitism mostly, although there is another kind of derangement going on among some of these people. You will see some saying that President Trump ordered these strikes in order to distract from the Jeffrey Epstein news that is dribbling out every day. I think that's nonsense. I don't think Trump has any risk from the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, and I think that's an absolute joke. So look, I support this. I don't cheer military action. I don't ever cheer going to war. And I realize there's a lot of risk here. There's some risk to American personnel, not as much risk as there would be if we had boots on the ground, which I do not think will happen. But Iran did lob missiles at American installations in multiple countries, including Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, where they appear to have hit something, don't yet know what it is, because there's a lot of smoke there. Maybe it was a storage facility of some kind. I don't know. The UAE, even Kuwait, which has remained neutral in all this stuff, and Jordan, Israel, of course. But Iran has lobbed missiles at all these places. And one interesting thing that I should have mentioned earlier, many of these places were aiming to basically stay neutral, especially Saudi Arabia, which was in a very interesting spot of trying to be an ally to the United States, but also sort of shielding Iran by saying that we're not going to let the U.S. Use our airspace. But now that Iran has attacked Saudi Arabia, everything has changed. And these Middle Eastern countries are out now all looking at Iran. These countries were not going to be Iran's ally, but they were basically going to be neutral, functionally neutral. And now they won't, because Iran had this sort of temper tantrum, which I guess I understand they're being attacked, but still they have turned these countries from neutrals into enemies. I support this operation because this Iranian regime needs to go. Some people ask a question, well, do they pose an imminent threat? And when they ask that, they assume the answer is no. I don't think the answer is no. It's true that Iran does not seem to have the capacity to drop a bomb or launch a missile that can reach the United States right now. But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't if they could. And beyond that, and this is the more important point, Iran will and does kill Americans and Westerners and Jews very frequently. Whenever they think they can get away with it, they have their proxies do these things. And we haven't done anything about it. And we have given them reason to believe that they can do terrible things to us. And we will respond, if at all, with small pinpricks that don't really do anything. And of course, don't forget, people like this don't mind whoever dies in service of their mission. They are millenarian, apocalyptic people who think that if they die in service of jihad, they're going to go get 72 virgins in heaven. So my take is, let's get them there sooner rather than later.